Welcome to Woo English, where you can learn English through stories using clear and simple sentences. Before we start today's story, we encourage you to leave a comment and press the like button. Your support helps us bring you more educational content. Please remember, the purpose of this story is educational, and we do not encourage or glorify any character's actions. Now, let's begin our story. Chapter 1. The Bennet Family. In the small village of Longbourn, there lived a family called the Bennets. Mr. and Mrs. Bennet had 5 daughters: Jane, Elizabeth, Mary, Kitty, and Lydia. They lived in a comfortable but not very rich household. Mr. Bennet spent most of his time in his study reading books. He was a quiet man who loved his daughters but did not worry too much about their future. Mrs. Bennet, however, was very concerned about finding good husbands for them. One day, exciting news spread through the village. Mrs. Bennet's friend, Mrs. Lucas, came to visit and shared the news. "Have you heard? A rich young man named Mr. Bingley has rented Netherfield Park. He has £4,000 or £5,000 a year, and he is single." Mrs. Bennet was overjoyed. "Mr. Bennet," she exclaimed, rushing to find her husband. "Did you hear what Mrs. Lucas said? A wealthy young man, Mr. Bingley, has come to live at Netherfield. You must visit him at once." Mr. Bennet looked up from his book and smiled at his wife. He enjoyed teasing her. "Why should I visit him? He might not care to meet our daughters." "Nonsense, Mr. Bennet," Mrs. Bennet replied. "He must meet them. Think, he could marry one of our girls." Mr. Bennet finally agreed. "Very well, I will visit him, but you must promise not to talk about it to the girls." Mrs. Bennet agreed, but she was too excited to keep it a secret. She called her daughters together and told them the news immediately. Jane, the eldest, was a gentle and kind young woman. Elizabeth, or Lizzie, was intelligent and had a quick wit. Mary, the third daughter, loved to read and play music. Kitty and Lydia, the youngest, were lively and loved to dance. The Bennet sisters were curious about Mr. Bingley and hoped to meet him soon. They talked about what he might be like and whether he would like them. A few days later, Mr. Bennet announced at breakfast, "I visited Mr. Bingley yesterday." Mrs. Bennet was thrilled. "Oh, Mr. Bennet, how wonderful! What did he say?" Mr. Bennet smiled. "We will see him at the next ball." The Bennet household was full of excitement. They could not wait to meet the rich and handsome Mr. Bingley. Little did they know, this visit would change their lives forever. As the days passed, the Bennet sisters prepared for the ball. They discussed what they would wear and what they would say. Jane, being the eldest, chose a simple but elegant dress. Elizabeth, known for her playful nature, picked a dress that reflected her lively spirit. Mary, the serious one, was more interested in reading than in the ball. Kitty and Lydia, full of energy, could not stop talking about the upcoming event. Finally, the night of the ball arrived. The Bennet family arrived at the assembly rooms where the event was being held. The room was filled with people, all dressed in their best clothes. There was music, laughter, and a sense of excitement in the air. Mrs. Bennet's eyes searched the room until she found Mr. Bingley. He was indeed handsome, with a pleasant smile and charming manners. He was talking with a tall, proud-looking man who had a serious expression. This was Mr. Darcy, Mr. Bingley's friend. Mr. Bingley soon noticed Jane and asked her to dance. She agreed, and they moved gracefully to the music. They made a lovely couple, and everyone noticed how well they looked together. Elizabeth, meanwhile, observed Mr. Darcy. He did not seem interested in dancing or talking to anyone. When Mr. Bingley suggested that Mr. Darcy ask Elizabeth to dance, Mr. Darcy replied, "She is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me." Elizabeth heard his comment and felt insulted. She decided then that she did not like Mr. Darcy at all. She shared the story with her friends, and they all agreed that Mr. Darcy was too proud and arrogant. Despite Mr. Darcy's rudeness, the ball was a success for the Bennet family. Jane and Mr. Bingley danced several times together, and it was clear that they liked each other. Mrs. Bennet was delighted, and already imagining Jane married to Mr. Bingley. As they returned home, the Bennet family talked about the evening. Mrs. Bennet was full of praise for Mr. Bingley, and had already planned their next meeting. Jane was quiet, but smiled when she thought of him. Elizabeth, however, could not stop thinking about Mr. Darcy's comment, and felt determined to avoid him in the future. Over the next few days, Mr. Bingley visited the Bennet family often. He was always polite and kind, especially to Jane. The more time they spent together, the more it seemed that Mr. Bingley was falling in love with her. This made Mrs. Bennet very happy. Elizabeth noticed that Mr. Darcy also visited with Mr. Bingley, but remained distant and reserved. He rarely spoke to anyone and seemed uncomfortable in their lively household. Elizabeth still felt upset by his earlier comment, and avoided him as much as possible. Despite this, Mr. Bingley's presence brought joy to the Bennet family, and they looked forward to his visits. The possibility of a happy future for Jane with Mr. Bingley seemed closer every day. Chapter 2. Mr. Bingley's Arrival. The Bennet family lived a quiet life in the village of Longbourn. One day, exciting news spread through the village. A rich young man named Mr. Bingley had rented Netherfield Park, a large and beautiful house nearby. The news came from Mrs. Bennet's friend, Mrs. Lucas, who was always the first to know everything. Mrs. Lucas visited the Bennets and shared the news with great excitement. "Have you heard?" she asked, her eyes wide with enthusiasm. "A wealthy young man named Mr. Bingley has rented Netherfield Park. He has £4,000 or £5,000 a year, and he is single." Mrs. Bennet was overjoyed. She could hardly contain her excitement. "Mr. Bennet," she exclaimed, rushing to find her husband, "did you hear what Mrs. Lucas said? A wealthy young man, Mr. Bingley, has come to live at Netherfield. You must visit him at once." Mr. Bennet was a quiet man who loved to tease his wife. He looked up from his book and smiled. "Why should I visit him? He might not care to meet our daughters." "Nonsense, Mr. Bennet," Mrs. Bennet replied. "He must meet them. Think, he could marry one of our girls." Mr. Bennet finally agreed. "Very well, I will visit him, but you must promise not to talk about it to the girls." Mrs. Bennet agreed, but she was too excited to keep it a secret. She called her daughters together and told them the news immediately. Jane, the eldest, was a gentle and kind young woman. Elizabeth, or Lizzie, was intelligent and had a quick wit. Mary, the third daughter, loved to read and play music. Kitty and Lydia, the youngest, were lively and loved to dance. The Bennet sisters were curious about Mr. Bingley and hoped to meet him soon. They talked about what he might be like and whether he would like them. A few days later, Mr. Bennet announced at breakfast, "I visited Mr. Bingley yesterday." Mrs. Bennet was thrilled. "Oh, Mr. Bennet, how wonderful! What did he say?" Mr. Bennet smiled. "We will see him at the next ball." The Bennet household was full of excitement. They could not wait to meet the rich and handsome Mr. Bingley. Little did they know, this visit would change their lives forever. As the days passed, the Bennet sisters prepared for the ball. They discussed what they would wear and what they would say. Jane, being the eldest, chose a simple but elegant dress. Elizabeth, known for her playful nature, picked a dress that reflected her lively spirit. Mary, the serious one, was more interested in reading than in the ball. Kitty and Lydia, full of energy, could not stop talking about the upcoming event. Finally, the night of the ball arrived. The Bennet family arrived at the assembly rooms where the event was being held. The room was filled with people, all dressed in their best clothes. There was music, laughter, and a sense of excitement in the air. Mrs. Bennet's eyes searched the room until she found Mr. Bingley. He was indeed handsome, with a pleasant smile and charming manners. He was talking with a tall, proud-looking man who had a serious expression. This was Mr. Darcy, Mr. Bingley's friend. Mr. Bingley soon noticed Jane and asked her to dance. She agreed, and they moved gracefully to the music. They made a lovely couple, and everyone noticed how well they looked together. Elizabeth, meanwhile, observed Mr. Darcy. He did not seem interested in dancing or talking to anyone. When Mr. Bingley suggested that Mr. Darcy ask Elizabeth to dance, Mr. Darcy replied, "She is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me." Elizabeth heard his comment and felt insulted. She decided then that she did not like Mr. Darcy at all. She shared the story with her friends, and they all agreed that Mr. Darcy was too proud and arrogant. Despite Mr. Darcy's rudeness, the ball was a success for the Bennet family. Jane and Mr. Bingley danced several times together, and it was clear that they liked each other. Mrs. Bennet was delighted and already imagining Jane married to Mr. Bingley. As they returned home, the Bennet family talked about the evening. Mrs. Bennet was full of praise for Mr. Bingley, and had already planned their next meeting. Jane was quiet, but smiled when she thought of him. Elizabeth, however, could not stop thinking about Mr. Darcy's comment, and felt determined to avoid him in the future. Over the next few days, Mr. Bingley visited the Bennet family often. He was always polite and kind, especially to Jane. The more time they spent together, the more it seemed that Mr. Bingley was falling in love with her. This made Mrs. Bennet very happy. Elizabeth noticed that Mr. Darcy also visited with Mr. Bingley, but remained distant and reserved. He rarely spoke to anyone and seemed uncomfortable in their lively household. Elizabeth still felt upset by his earlier comment and avoided him as much as possible. Despite this, Mr. Bingley's presence brought joy to the Bennet family, and they looked forward to his visits. The possibility of a happy future for Jane with Mr. Bingley seemed closer every day. The excitement of Mr. Bingley's arrival at Netherfield Park had brought new energy to the Bennet household. Mrs. Bennet could not stop talking about him and his fortune. She dreamed of the day when Jane would marry him and secure the future for their family. The other sisters also speculated about what their future might hold, each imagining different possibilities. Mr. Bennet, although quieter, was secretly pleased to see his family so lively and hopeful. He enjoyed the conversations and the planning, even if he did not show it outwardly. He hoped that Mr. Bingley would be a good match for Jane, and that Elizabeth would find happiness as well, despite her initial dislike of Mr. Darcy. The village of Longbourn buzzed with the news of Mr. Bingley's arrival and the upcoming events at Netherfield Park. The excitement was not just within the Bennet family, but also among their friends and neighbours. Everyone was curious about the new arrival and what changes he might bring to their small community. As the days went by, the Bennet family prepared for more visits and gatherings. Mrs. Bennet made sure that their home was always ready to welcome guests, and the sisters practiced their social skills, hoping to make good impressions. The prospect of new friendships and possible marriages kept their spirits high. Mr. Bingley's arrival had indeed brought a wave of excitement and hope to the Bennet family. The future seemed brighter, and they all looked forward to the days ahead, filled with new experiences and possibilities. Little did they know, this was just the beginning of a series of events that would change their lives forever. Chapter 3. The Meryton Ball. The Meryton Ball was the most anticipated event in the village of Longbourn. Everyone looked forward to it, especially the Bennet family. Mrs. Bennet had high hopes for the evening, dreaming that her daughters would catch the eye of wealthy and eligible gentlemen. The girls were excited too, especially after hearing that Mr. Bingley and his friend Mr. Darcy would be attending. On the evening of the ball, the Bennet family was full of excitement. Jane wore a beautiful white dress that made her look angelic. Elizabeth, or Lizzie, chose a gown that highlighted her lively and cheerful nature. Mary, serious and quiet, wore a modest dress. Kitty and Lydia, the youngest, were dressed in vibrant colours and couldn't stop giggling with excitement. As they arrived at the assembly rooms, the Bennet family was greeted by a sea of familiar faces. The room was filled with people from the village, all dressed in their best clothes. The music played, and there was a buzz of conversation and laughter. The atmosphere was electric. Mrs. Bennet's eyes quickly found Mr. Bingley. He was indeed handsome, with a pleasant smile and easy manners. He was talking with a tall, serious-looking man. This was Mr. Darcy, Mr. Bingley's friend. Mr. Darcy appeared reserved and aloof, standing apart from the lively crowd. Mr. Bingley soon noticed Jane and asked her to dance. She accepted gracefully, and they moved beautifully together on the dance floor. Everyone watched them, admiring how well they looked as a couple. Mrs. Bennet could hardly contain her delight. Elizabeth, meanwhile, observed Mr. Darcy. He did not seem interested in dancing or talking to anyone. When Mr. Bingley suggested that Mr. Darcy ask Elizabeth to dance, Mr. Darcy replied, "She is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me." Elizabeth overheard this comment and felt a wave of indignation. She decided then and there that she did not like Mr. Darcy. She shared the story with her friends, and they all agreed that Mr. Darcy was proud and arrogant. Despite Mr. Darcy's rudeness, the ball was a success for the Bennet family. Jane and Mr. Bingley danced several times together, clearly enjoying each other's company. Elizabeth danced with other gentlemen and enjoyed herself, despite her irritation with Mr. Darcy. As the night progressed, Elizabeth noticed Mr. Darcy watching her. She pretended not to see him and focused on enjoying the evening. She danced with Mr. Lucas, a kind and talkative gentleman, and with Colonel Forster, who was friendly and charming. When Elizabeth finally took a break from dancing, she found herself standing near Mr. Darcy. He looked at her intently, but she pretended not to notice. Eventually he approached her and asked, "May I have the next dance, Miss Bennet?" Surprised, Elizabeth hesitated for a moment, but then agreed. "Yes, you may, Mr. Darcy." As they danced, Elizabeth tried to make polite conversation, but Mr. Darcy's responses were brief and formal. She found him difficult to talk to, and even more difficult to like. His serious demeanour and lack of warmth made her feel uncomfortable. After the dance, Elizabeth rejoined her sisters. Lydia, always full of energy, exclaimed, "Lizzie, I saw you dancing with Mr. Darcy. What did you think of him?" Elizabeth shrugged. "He is handsome, but he is also proud and not very friendly. I do not think I like him much." Jane, ever the peacemaker, said, "Perhaps he is just shy. Sometimes people take time to open up." Elizabeth smiled at her sister's kindness. "Perhaps you are right, Jane, but I still do not like him." As the ball came to an end, the Bennet family gathered their things and prepared to leave. Mrs. Bennet was in high spirits, delighted by Mr. Bingley's attention to Jane. "Did you see how often he danced with her?" she said. "I am sure he likes her very much." Mr. Bennet, more reserved, simply smiled and said, "We shall see." On the way home, the family talked about the evening. Jane was quiet, but seemed happy. Elizabeth, still annoyed by Mr. Darcy's comment, shared her thoughts with her family. Lydia and Kitty, excited by the night's events, could not stop talking about all the dances and the people they had met. The days following the ball were filled with talk and speculation. The Bennet family could not stop discussing Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy. Mrs. Bennet was hopeful that Mr. Bingley would soon call on Jane. Elizabeth, on the other hand, found herself thinking about Mr. Darcy more than she wanted to. Despite her irritation with him, she was curious about his reserved nature and the way he watched her during the ball. One afternoon, as Elizabeth and Jane were walking to Meryton to visit their aunt and uncle, they saw Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy riding towards them. Mr. Bingley greeted them warmly, and they talked for a few minutes. Mr. Darcy, as usual, was quiet and formal, but he looked at Elizabeth with a curious expression. After the gentleman rode away, Jane said, "Mr. Bingley is so pleasant and kind. I hope he visits us soon." Elizabeth nodded, but was deep in thought about Mr. Darcy. "He is so different from Mr. Bingley," she said. "I wonder why he is so proud and distant." Jane smiled. "Maybe he is not as proud as he seems. Sometimes people hide their true feelings." Elizabeth laughed. "You always see the good in everyone, Jane. I hope you are right." The arrival of Mr. Bingley and the Meryton ball had certainly brought excitement and new possibilities to the Bennet family. They looked forward to more visits and hoped that the future would bring happiness and good fortune. Elizabeth, despite her misgivings about Mr. Darcy, could not deny that the evening had been interesting and that she was eager to see what would happen next. Chapter 4. Jane and Mr. Bingley. The days following the Meryton ball were filled with excitement and anticipation for the Bennet family. Mr. Bingley's attention to Jane at the ball had not gone unnoticed, and Mrs. Bennet was thrilled at the prospect of a possible match. Jane, though more reserved in her feelings, could not help but feel a growing affection for the charming Mr. Bingley. Mr. Bingley began visiting the Bennet household more frequently. Each visit was a source of delight for Mrs. Bennet and a cause of quiet joy for Jane. Elizabeth, always observant, noticed how Jane's eyes would light up whenever Mr. Bingley was mentioned or appeared. It was clear to her that her sister was falling in love. One sunny afternoon, Mr. Bingley called upon the Bennets and invited Jane to ride with him. Mrs. Bennet eagerly agreed on Jane's behalf, and Jane, blushing, accepted the invitation. As they rode together, they talked about many things: the beauty of the countryside, their favourite books, and their families. Mr. Bingley was always attentive and kind, and Jane found herself opening up to him more with each passing day. Meanwhile, Elizabeth had mixed feelings about Mr. Bingley's friend, Mr. Darcy. She could not forget his rude comment at the ball, but she also noticed his occasional glances and the way he seemed to observe her when he thought she was not looking. Despite her initial dislike, Elizabeth found herself intrigued by Mr. Darcy's complex character. One evening, after Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy had left their home, Elizabeth and Jane sat together in their room, talking about the day's events. Jane, with a dreamy smile, spoke of Mr. Bingley's kindness and good nature. "He is so different from anyone I have ever met," Jane said softly. "He is always so attentive and considerate. I cannot help but feel a growing affection for him." Elizabeth smiled at her sister's happiness. I am glad you like him, Jane. He seems to be a good man, and it is clear that he admires you very much. Jane blushed. Do you really think so, Lizzie? Yes, I do, Elizabeth replied. Anyone can see that he is very fond of you. But what about Mr. Darcy? What do you think of him? Jane hesitated. He is very different from Mr. Bingley. He seems serious and reserved, but I believe he is a good man too. Maybe he just needs time to open up. Elizabeth thought about this. Perhaps you are right, Jane. He is certainly a puzzle, but I find it hard to forget his proud and distant manner. As the days turned into weeks, Mr. Bingley's visits became a regular occurrence. He often brought Mr. Darcy with him, much to the mixed feelings of the Bennet family. While Mr. Bingley's presence was always a source of joy, Mr. Darcy's visits were met with a variety of reactions. Mrs. Bennet continued to see him as proud and unapproachable, while Elizabeth's curiosity about him grew. One afternoon, while the Bennet sisters were walking to Meryton, they encountered Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy. Mr. Bingley greeted them warmly and soon fell into easy conversation with Jane. Mr. Darcy, on the other hand, was more reserved. Elizabeth noticed that he seemed to be struggling with something he wanted to say. Finally, Mr. Darcy approached Elizabeth. Miss Bennet, he began, may I have the honour of walking with you? Surprised, Elizabeth nodded. Of course, Mr. Darcy. As they walked, Mr. Darcy seemed to choose his words carefully. I hope you do not judge me too harshly, Miss Bennet. I fear I may have given you the wrong impression at the ball. Elizabeth was taken aback by his candidness. Indeed, Mr. Darcy, you did seem rather distant. Mr. Darcy sighed. It is not my intention to appear proud. I find it difficult to express myself in such settings, but I assure you, my feelings are not as they may have seemed. Elizabeth listened, intrigued. I appreciate your honesty, Mr. Darcy. It is not easy to change one's first impressions. Mr. Darcy nodded. Thank you, Miss Bennet. I hope in time you might see me differently. Their conversation left Elizabeth with much to think about. She shared the encounter with Jane later that evening, who listened with her usual calm and understanding manner. Maybe he is just shy, Lizzie, Jane suggested. Not everyone finds it easy to be sociable. Elizabeth agreed that this might be true. Perhaps I have judged him too quickly. He does seem to be trying to make amends. As winter approached, the Bennet household was filled with warmth and laughter. Mr. Bingley's frequent visits continued, and Jane's affection for him grew stronger each day. Elizabeth noticed how happy her sister was and felt hopeful for her future. One evening, during a family gathering, Mr. Bingley pulled Jane aside and spoke to her softly. Elizabeth watched from a distance, noticing the tender look in Mr. Bingley's eyes. Jane returned to her family with a radiant smile, and Elizabeth knew that something significant had happened. Lizzie, Jane whispered later, Mr. Bingley has asked me to accompany him to the Christmas ball at Netherfield. He says he wants to spend more time with me. Elizabeth hugged her sister. I'm so happy for you, Jane. It is clear that he cares for you deeply. Jane nodded, her eyes shining with joy. I believe he does, Lizzie, and I care for him too. As the Christmas ball approached, the excitement in the Bennet household grew. Mrs. Bennet could hardly contain her delight, already imagining Jane as the future mistress of Netherfield Park. The other sisters shared in the excitement, eager to see what the evening would bring. On the night of the ball, the Bennet family arrived at Netherfield, where they were warmly welcomed by Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy. The house was beautifully decorated, and the atmosphere was festive. Jane and Mr. Bingley danced together, their affection for each other evident to everyone. Elizabeth, observing the couple, felt a sense of satisfaction. Her sister had found happiness, and it seemed that Mr. Bingley was truly a kind and caring gentleman. She also noticed Mr. Darcy watching her, and she wondered if there might be more to him than she had first thought. As the evening came to a close, Elizabeth found herself alone with Mr. Darcy. He approached her and said, "Miss Bennet, I hope you have enjoyed the evening." "I have, Mr. Darcy," Elizabeth replied. "It has been a wonderful night." Mr. Darcy hesitated for a moment before saying, "I would very much like to get to know you better, Miss Bennet. I hope you will give me the chance to prove that I am not the man you first thought I was." Elizabeth looked into his eyes and saw sincerity. "I would like that, Mr. Darcy. Perhaps we can start anew." With that, the evening ended on a hopeful note. Jane and Mr. Bingley's growing affection, and Elizabeth's changing impressions of Mr. Darcy, hinted at the beginning of new and exciting chapters in their lives. Chapter 5. Mr. Collins's Visit. The Bennet family lived in a state of moderate comfort in Longbourn. However, their peace was occasionally disturbed by the thought of the future, particularly because their estate was entailed. This meant it would pass to a male heir, and since Mr. Bennet had no sons, their home would go to Mr. Collins, a distant cousin. One morning, a letter arrived from Mr. Collins announcing his intention to visit Longbourn. The news caused quite a stir in the Bennet household. Mrs. Bennet was eager to make a good impression, hoping that Mr. Collins might choose one of her daughters to marry, thus keeping the estate in the family. "Mr. Bennet," Mrs. Bennet exclaimed, "we must prepare for Mr. Collins's visit. He is to arrive tomorrow." Mr. Bennet, always amused by his wife's excitement, replied, "I suppose we should make the necessary arrangements." The following day, Mr. Collins arrived punctually. He was a tall, heavy-looking young man of 25. He had a grave and formal manner, and his speech was filled with compliments and polite expressions. Mr. Collins was a clergyman, and he never missed an opportunity to mention his patroness, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, who had given him his living. "Mr. Bennet, Mrs. Bennet, thank you for your kind welcome," Mr. Collins said as he entered the house. "I am honoured to be here and to make the acquaintance of my charming cousins." Mrs. Bennet, always eager to impress, replied, "We are delighted to have you, Mr. Collins. Please make yourself at home." Mr. Collins continued to speak in a flowery manner, praising everything he saw. "What a delightful room, and such elegant furnishings! Lady Catherine herself would be most pleased." Mr. Bennet, with a twinkle in his eye, said, "I am sure she would, Mr. Collins. But tell us, how do you find Rosings Park?" Mr. Collins launched into a lengthy description of Lady Catherine's grand estate and her many virtues. The Bennet sisters listened politely, though they found it difficult to take him seriously. Elizabeth, in particular, struggled to hide her amusement at Mr. Collins's pompous manner. During his stay, Mr. Collins continued to be a source of both amusement and irritation. He often read aloud to the family from his favourite sermons, and he never missed an opportunity to mention Lady Catherine's wisdom and generosity. However, he also showed a keen interest in the Bennet sisters, especially Jane and Elizabeth. One evening, as the family sat together, Mr. Collins made a surprising announcement. "Mrs. Bennet, Mr. Bennet, I have come here with a particular purpose in mind. As you know, the Longbourn estate is entailed to me. I feel it is my duty to make amends for this by marrying one of your daughters." Mrs. Bennet's eyes lit up with excitement. "Oh, Mr. Collins, what a generous offer! Have you a particular daughter in mind?" Mr. Collins cleared his throat and said, Indeed I do. I have observed Miss Jane Bennet and have been much impressed by her beauty and grace. I should like to make her my wife. There was a moment of silence, and then Mrs. Bennet, trying to hide her disappointment, said, "Mr. Collins, we are very flattered. However, Jane is likely to be engaged soon." Mr. Collins looked surprised, but quickly recovered. "I see. In that case, I would be equally honoured to make a proposal to Miss Elizabeth." Elizabeth, who had been listening quietly, was taken aback. She had not expected this, and she did not like Mr. Collins enough to consider marrying him. She glanced at her father, who gave her an encouraging nod. "Mr. Collins," Elizabeth began, "I am grateful for your proposal, but I must decline. I do not feel that we are suited to each other." Mr. Collins was clearly shocked. "Miss Elizabeth, I am astonished. Are you rejecting my offer?" "Yes, Mr. Collins, I am," Elizabeth replied firmly. Mrs. Bennet was beside herself with frustration. "Lizzie, how can you be so foolish? Mr. Collins is offering you a secure future." But Mr. Bennet intervened. "Elizabeth has made her decision, and we must respect it. Mr. Collins, perhaps you should reconsider your choice." Mr. Collins was clearly upset, but tried to remain composed. "Very well, Miss Elizabeth. I respect your decision, though I must say I am disappointed. I shall speak with Lady Catherine about this matter. She will be most displeased." After this, Mr. Collins's manner towards Elizabeth changed. He became more distant and reserved, focusing his attentions elsewhere. He spent more time talking to Mrs. Bennet, who tried to persuade him to reconsider his proposal to Elizabeth, but he remained firm in his decision. Despite the tension, Mr. Collins's visit continued. He joined the family for meals, attended church with them, and took long walks around the estate. During these walks, he often spoke about the grandeur of Rosings Park and Lady Catherine's many virtues. One day, while walking with Mr. Collins, Elizabeth found herself alone with him. He seemed determined to try once more to win her favour. "Miss Elizabeth," he began, "I must ask you to reconsider your decision. I am convinced that we could be very happy together. Lady Catherine herself would approve of our match." Elizabeth shook her head. "Mr. Collins, I appreciate your persistence, but my feelings have not changed. I do not believe we would suit each other." Mr. Collins sighed. "Very well, Miss Elizabeth. I see that you are determined. I shall not trouble you further on this matter." With that, the matter was settled. Mr. Collins's visit came to an end, and he prepared to return to his parish. Before he left, he thanked the Bennet family for their hospitality and assured them that he would remain in contact. As he departed, Mrs. Bennet could not hide her disappointment. "Oh, Mr. Bennet, what a missed opportunity! Elizabeth could have secured our home and future." Mr. Bennet smiled and said, "Elizabeth will find her own way, my dear. We must trust her judgment." Elizabeth was relieved that Mr. Collins was leaving. She was grateful for her father's support and confident in her decision. She knew that she wanted to marry for love, not convenience. In the days that followed, life at Longbourn returned to its usual rhythm. The excitement of Mr. Collins's visit gradually faded, but the Bennet family knew that the question of their future remained. Despite this, they remained hopeful, trusting that love and happiness would find their way to Longbourn. Chapter 6. Mr. Collins's Proposal. The Bennet family was still buzzing with excitement and tension from Mr. Collins's visit. His intention to marry one of the Bennet daughters had become the main topic of conversation. Mrs. Bennet was determined that one of her girls should accept his proposal, especially Elizabeth, who had already caught Mr. Collins's eye. One morning, Mr. Collins asked to speak privately with Elizabeth. Mrs. Bennet, full of anticipation, quickly agreed and ushered them into the sitting room. Elizabeth, feeling a mix of curiosity and dread, followed Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins began with a formal bow. "Miss Elizabeth, may I have the honour of speaking to you privately?" Elizabeth nodded, trying to hide her unease. "Of course, Mr. Collins." Mr. Collins cleared his throat and began his prepared speech. "My dear Miss Elizabeth, your modesty, economy, and other amiable qualities have won my heart. As you know, I am to inherit this estate, and I feel it is my duty to choose a wife who will make me happy and fulfill the expectations of Lady Catherine de Bourgh." Elizabeth listened, trying to remain composed, as Mr. Collins continued. "My reasons for marrying are, first, to set an example of matrimony in my parish. Second, I believe it will add greatly to my happiness. And third, it is the particular advice and recommendation of Lady Catherine. She has graciously approved of my intention to marry a Bennet daughter. Since Miss Jane Bennet is soon to be engaged, I have turned my attention to you, Miss Elizabeth." Elizabeth could hardly believe what she was hearing. Mr. Collins's proposal seemed more about duty and Lady Catherine than about love or affection. She tried to think of a polite way to refuse him. "Mr. Collins," Elizabeth began, "I am honoured by your proposal, but I must decline. I do not feel that we would make each other happy." Mr. Collins looked shocked, but quickly recovered. "Miss Elizabeth, you must understand that I am offering you a secure future. Your family estate will one day be mine, and marrying me would keep it in the family." "I understand, Mr. Collins," Elizabeth replied gently, "but I believe marriage should be based on mutual respect and affection. I do not feel that we have that connection." Mr. Collins frowned, clearly not expecting this response. "Miss Elizabeth, I understand that young ladies often reject a first proposal. It is a way to increase their suitor's ardour. Therefore I shall ask again, confident that you will accept." Elizabeth shook her head firmly. "No, Mr. Collins. I appreciate your offer, but my feelings will not change. I cannot marry you." Mr. Collins's expression turned from surprise to indignation. "I see that you are determined. I must say, Miss Elizabeth, that you are rejecting a very advantageous offer. Lady Catherine will be most displeased." Elizabeth remained calm. "I am sorry to disappoint you and Lady Catherine, Mr. Collins, but I must be true to my own feelings." At that moment, Mrs. Bennet burst into the room, having been unable to contain her curiosity. "Well, Lizzie, have you accepted Mr. Collins's proposal?" Elizabeth stood up and faced her mother. "No, Mamma, I have refused him." Mrs. Bennet's face turned red with anger and frustration. "Refused him? How can you be so foolish, Lizzie? Mr. Collins is offering you security and a home." Mr. Collins, feeling both embarrassed and rejected, tried to calm the situation. "Mrs. Bennet, it is clear that Miss Elizabeth is set in her decision. I shall not press the matter further." Mr. Bennet, who had been listening from the doorway, entered the room. "Elizabeth has made her choice, and we must respect it. Mr. Collins, we appreciate your kind intentions, but we cannot force Lizzie to marry against her will." Mr. Collins sighed and bowed. "Very well. I shall take my leave and inform Lady Catherine of the situation." After Mr. Collins left, Mrs. Bennet could not hide her disappointment. "Oh, Mr. Bennet, what a missed opportunity! Elizabeth could have secured our home and future. Mr. Bennet smiled and patted Elizabeth's shoulder. Lizzie will find her own way, my dear. We must trust her judgment. Elizabeth was relieved that her father supported her decision. She knew that marrying Mr. Collins would have been a mistake, and she was grateful for her family's understanding, even if her mother was upset. As the days passed, the household slowly returned to its usual routine. Mr. Collins, though disappointed, continued his visit at Longbourn, though his attentions were now more distant. He spent more time with Mrs. Bennet, who still tried to persuade him to reconsider Elizabeth, but to no avail. One evening, Mr. Collins announced that he would be leaving Longbourn to return to his parish. "I must inform Lady Catherine of the outcome of my visit," he said. "I thank you for your hospitality, and I hope we may continue to be on good terms." Mrs. Bennet, still hoping to change his mind, replied, "Of course, Mr. Collins. We wish you well, and hope to see you again soon." After Mr. Collins departed, Elizabeth felt a sense of relief. She was grateful for her father's support and confident in her decision. She knew that she wanted to marry for love, not convenience, and she was hopeful that the right person would come along in time. Life at Longbourn gradually returned to normal. The Bennet sisters resumed their usual activities, and the household was once again filled with laughter and chatter. The excitement of Mr. Collins's visit and proposal became a distant memory, though Mrs. Bennet occasionally reminded Elizabeth of what she had refused. Elizabeth, however, remained firm in her resolve. She believed that she had made the right choice, and that true happiness could not be found in a marriage of convenience. She continued to enjoy the company of her sisters and friends, looking forward to the future with hope and determination. As winter turned to spring, new opportunities and challenges awaited the Bennet family. Elizabeth knew that life would continue to bring surprises, and she was ready to face them with courage and grace. The experience with Mr. Collins had taught her the importance of staying true to herself, and she was determined to follow her heart, no matter what the future held. Chapter 7. Charlotte's Decision. The days following Mr. Collins' departure from Longbourn were calm, but soon the Bennet family received surprising news that would once again stir the household. Charlotte Lucas, Elizabeth's close friend, had accepted Mr. Collins's proposal of marriage. The news was both unexpected and shocking to the Bennets, especially Elizabeth. Charlotte Lucas was a sensible, intelligent woman of 27 years. She was practical and understood the realities of her situation. She knew that as she grew older, her chances of marrying well would diminish. When Mr. Collins proposed to her, she saw it as an opportunity to secure her future, even if it meant marrying a man she did not love. It all began when Mr. Collins visited the Lucas family after leaving Longbourn. Sir William and Lady Lucas welcomed him warmly, and Charlotte, always practical, saw an opportunity to improve her situation. She treated Mr. Collins with kindness and respect, something he desperately sought after Elizabeth's rejection. One afternoon, while the Lucases were having tea, Mr. Collins turned to Charlotte and began to speak. "Miss Lucas, you have shown me great kindness during my stay here. I find your company most agreeable. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Charlotte, though not in love with Mr. Collins, understood the security his proposal offered. She thought carefully before answering. "Mr. Collins, I would be honored to accept your proposal." Mr. Collins beamed with satisfaction. "Thank you, Miss Lucas. I shall do my utmost to make you happy. Lady Catherine de Bourgh will be pleased to hear of our engagement." The news of their engagement spread quickly. When Elizabeth heard of it, she could hardly believe it. She went to visit Charlotte immediately to understand her friend's decision. "Charlotte, is it true?" Elizabeth asked, her voice filled with concern. "Have you really accepted Mr. Collins's proposal?" Charlotte nodded, a calm expression on her face. "Yes, Lizzie, I have. It is a practical decision. I am not romantic, you know. I have always been realistic about my prospects. Mr. Collins can provide me with a comfortable home and a secure future." Elizabeth was both surprised and saddened. "But Charlotte, do you love him?" Charlotte sighed. "I am not in love with Mr. Collins, but I respect him. He is a decent man, and he needs a wife who will support him. I believe I can be that wife. At my age, I cannot afford to be too choosy." Elizabeth felt a pang of sadness for her friend. "I understand, Charlotte. I just wish you all the happiness in the world." Charlotte smiled gently. "Thank you, Lizzie. I hope you can be happy for me too." The engagement was quickly followed by the wedding, which was a modest affair. Mr. Collins and Charlotte were married at the local church, with their families and a few close friends in attendance. Mrs. Bennet, although still disappointed that Mr. Collins had not married one of her daughters, attended the wedding with Mr. Bennet and their daughters. The wedding ceremony was simple but heartfelt. Mr. Collins, in his usual formal manner, vowed to take care of Charlotte, and she, in turn, promised to be a supportive and faithful wife. Elizabeth watched the ceremony with mixed feelings, hoping that her friend would find contentment in her marriage. After the wedding, Mr. Collins and Charlotte moved to their new home at Hunsford, near Rosings Park. Lady Catherine de Bourgh, Mr. Collins's patroness, welcomed Charlotte and praised Mr. Collins for his excellent choice of wife. Charlotte quickly adapted to her new role, managing the household and supporting her husband in his duties. Elizabeth received letters from Charlotte describing her new life. Charlotte wrote about her interactions with Lady Catherine, who frequently visited and offered advice on managing the household. She also mentioned Mr. Collins's satisfaction with their arrangement and his continued devotion to Lady Catherine. Despite the practical nature of her marriage, Charlotte found ways to find happiness. She kept herself busy with household duties, enjoyed walks in the countryside, and maintained her friendships through letters. Elizabeth admired Charlotte's resilience and ability to make the best of her situation. One day, Elizabeth received a particularly thoughtful letter from Charlotte. It read, "Dear Lizzie, I hope this letter finds you well. Life at Hunsford has been busy but pleasant. Mr. Collins is content, and Lady Catherine continues to offer her guidance. Though my marriage is not one of great passion, I have found contentment in my daily routines and the stability it provides. I want you to know that I am happy with my decision. I do miss our conversations and the easy camaraderie we shared. Please visit us at Hunsford when you can. It would bring me great joy to see you. Yours affectionately, Charlotte." Elizabeth was relieved to hear that Charlotte had found some measure of happiness. She resolved to visit her friend as soon as possible. When Elizabeth finally visited Hunsford, she was welcomed warmly by Charlotte and Mr. Collins. The house was neat and comfortable, a testament to Charlotte's skill in managing her home. Mr. Collins was his usual formal self, but it was clear he was pleased with his choice of wife. During her stay, Elizabeth had the opportunity to see how Charlotte had adjusted to her new life. Charlotte managed her household with efficiency and grace, and she seemed at peace with her decision. Elizabeth and Charlotte spent time talking and reminiscing about their days in Longbourn. One afternoon, as they walked in the garden, Charlotte said, "Lizzie, I know my marriage to Mr. Collins is not what you would have chosen, but it suits me. I have security and a purpose. I hope you can see that I am content." Elizabeth smiled and took her friend's hand. "I do see that, Charlotte. I admire your strength and practicality. You have made the best of your situation, and I am glad you are happy." Charlotte nodded, a serene expression on her face. "Thank you, Lizzie. That means a lot to me." As Elizabeth prepared to return to Longbourn, she felt a renewed sense of respect for her friend. Charlotte had made a difficult choice, but she had embraced it with grace and dignity. Elizabeth realized that everyone must find their own path to happiness, and Charlotte had found hers. Chapter 8. Netherfield Leaves. Life at Longbourn had settled into a pleasant routine. Jane Bennet was glowing with happiness due to Mr. Bingley's frequent visits and his obvious affection for her. The Bennet family, especially Mrs. Bennet, was hopeful that a proposal would soon follow. Elizabeth was delighted for her sister and enjoyed observing the developing romance. However, the tranquility of Longbourn was soon shattered by unexpected news. One morning, as the Bennet family gathered for breakfast, Mr. Bennet received a letter from Mr. Bingley. With a serious expression, he read the letter aloud to his family. "My dear Mr. Bennet, I regret to inform you that Mr. Bingley and I must leave Netherfield immediately. We have urgent business in London and do not know when we shall return. Please convey my apologies to your family, particularly Miss Bennet. Yours sincerely, Fitzwilliam Darcy." The room fell silent. Jane's face turned pale, and she could hardly believe what she had heard. Mrs. Bennet was the first to speak, her voice trembling with disbelief and anger. "Leave Netherfield? How can this be? They were so happy here. What could have happened?" Elizabeth, trying to remain calm, turned to Jane. "Jane, are you all right?" Jane managed a weak smile. "I'm fine, Lizzie. I don't understand. Everything seemed so perfect." Mrs. Bennet was beside herself with frustration. "This is Mr. Darcy's doing. I am sure of it. He never liked our family and has taken Mr. Bingley away from us." Mr. Bennet, always the voice of reason, said, "We do not know the full story. Let us not jump to conclusions. Jane, perhaps you should write to Mr. Bingley and ask for an explanation." Jane nodded, though her heart was heavy with sadness. She spent the rest of the day composing a letter to Mr. Bingley, hoping to understand why he had left so suddenly. She poured her feelings into the letter, expressing her confusion and disappointment, but also her understanding of any obligations he might have in London. Days turned into weeks, and there was no response from Mr. Bingley. Jane's initial sadness deepened into heartbreak. She tried to keep a brave face, but Elizabeth could see the pain in her sister's eyes. The whole family felt the impact of Mr. Bingley's departure, but none more so than Jane. Elizabeth, always protective of her sister, became increasingly suspicious of Mr. Darcy's involvement. She remembered his reserved and disapproving manner, and couldn't shake the feeling that he had influenced Mr. Bingley's decision to leave. One afternoon, while Jane and Elizabeth were walking in the garden, Elizabeth broached the subject. "Jane, do you truly believe Mr. Bingley would leave without a good reason? He seemed so devoted to you." Jane sighed. "I don't know, Lizzie. I want to believe in his feelings for me, but his silence is so hard to understand." Elizabeth frowned. "I suspect Mr. Darcy had a hand in this. He never approved of our family, and I think he persuaded Mr. Bingley to leave." Jane shook her head. "But why, Lizzie? Why would Mr. Darcy do such a thing?" "Because he is proud and prejudiced," Elizabeth replied. "He thinks we are beneath him and his friend." As the weeks went by, Jane's heartbreak did not lessen. She tried to keep herself busy with her usual activities, but nothing could fill the void left by Mr. Bingley's absence. Elizabeth watched her sister with growing concern, determined to find out the truth behind Mr. Bingley's departure. Meanwhile, news of Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy's sudden departure spread through Meryton. The local gossip mill was in full swing, and everyone had their own theories about why the two gentlemen had left so abruptly. Some believed that urgent business had indeed called them away, while others speculated about more scandalous reasons. Mrs. Bennet was inconsolable. She lamented the lost opportunity for Jane's marriage and blamed Mr. Darcy for everything. "That man has ruined everything," she cried. "If only Mr. Bingley had stayed, Jane would be engaged by now." Mr. Bennet, though sympathetic, tried to calm his wife. "We must not lose hope, my dear. Perhaps Mr. Bingley will return once his business in London is concluded." But Mrs. Bennet would not be consoled. "He will never come back. I just know it. Mr. Darcy has poisoned his mind against us." Elizabeth decided to take matters into her own hands. She wrote a letter to her aunt and uncle, Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner, who lived in London. She asked them to look into the matter discreetly and find out what had caused Mr. Bingley to leave so suddenly. A few weeks later, Elizabeth received a reply from her aunt. Mrs. Gardiner had spoken to some acquaintances and discovered that Mr. Darcy had indeed influenced Mr. Bingley's decision. According to her sources, Mr. Darcy had convinced Mr. Bingley that Jane did not truly care for him, and that it would be best for him to leave. Elizabeth was furious. She shared the contents of the letter with Jane, who was devastated to learn that Mr. Darcy had interfered. "How could he do this?" Jane asked, tears filling her eyes. "I thought Mr. Bingley cared for me." Elizabeth hugged her sister tightly. "He did, Jane. This is Mr. Darcy's doing. He has manipulated the situation to his advantage." Jane's heartbreak deepened, but she tried to remain strong. "What can we do, Lizzie? How can we change what has happened?" Elizabeth shook her head. "I don't know, Jane, but I promise you I will find a way to make Mr. Darcy see the error of his ways." Life at Longbourn slowly returned to normal, but the absence of Mr. Bingley was a constant shadow over the family. Jane's once bright smile was now tinged with sadness, and Elizabeth's anger toward Mr. Darcy grew stronger with each passing day. As winter turned to spring, the Bennet family continued their daily routines, but the hope of Mr. Bingley's return never fully left their minds. Elizabeth remained determined to find a way to expose Mr. Darcy's interference and restore Jane's happiness. One day, while walking to Meryton, Elizabeth encountered Mr. Wickham, a charming officer who had recently joined the militia stationed in the village. They struck up a conversation, and Elizabeth found him to be friendly and engaging. During their conversation, Mr. Wickham mentioned Mr. Darcy, and Elizabeth seized the opportunity to learn more about him. "You know Mr. Darcy?" she asked. Mr. Wickham nodded. "Yes, we have known each other since childhood. Our families are connected." Elizabeth's curiosity was piqued. "What do you think of him?" Mr. Wickham hesitated before replying. "Mr. Darcy is a complicated man. He is proud and often misunderstood. But I must confess, he has treated me poorly in the past." Elizabeth's suspicions were confirmed. "I see. That aligns with what I have observed. He persuaded Mr. Bingley to leave Netherfield and abandon my sister Jane." Mr. Wickham looked surprised, but not entirely shocked. "I wouldn't put it past him. Mr. Darcy is known for his interference in the lives of others." As Elizabeth continued her conversation with Mr. Wickham, she felt a renewed sense of determination. She would not rest until Mr. Darcy's true nature was revealed and Jane's happiness was restored. The departure of Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy had left a void in their lives, but Elizabeth was determined to find a way to bring joy back to her beloved sister. Chapter 9. Elizabeth visits Charlotte. Spring had come to Longbourn, bringing with it fresh flowers and a sense of renewal. However, the Bennet household was still under the cloud of Jane's heartbreak over Mr. Bingley's sudden departure. Elizabeth was determined to bring some cheer back into her life, and an invitation from her friend Charlotte provided the perfect opportunity. Charlotte Lucas, now Mrs. Collins, had written to Elizabeth, inviting her to visit her new home in Kent. Elizabeth was eager to see her friend, and accepted the invitation with enthusiasm. Mrs. Bennet, though still disappointed by Elizabeth's refusal of Mr. Collins, agreed to the visit, hoping that some time away would lift Elizabeth's spirits. The journey to Kent was long but pleasant. Elizabeth enjoyed the changing scenery and the prospect of seeing Charlotte. Upon arriving at Hunsford Parsonage, she was warmly greeted by Charlotte and Mr. Collins. The parsonage was neat and comfortable, a reflection of Charlotte's capable management. "Welcome, Lizzie," Charlotte exclaimed, embracing her friend. "I am so glad you could come." Elizabeth smiled warmly. "Thank you for inviting me, Charlotte. It's wonderful to see you." Mr. Collins, ever the formal host, bowed deeply. "Miss Elizabeth, it is an honour to have you here at Hunsford. Lady Catherine de Bourgh will be most pleased to meet you." Elizabeth tried to hide her amusement at Mr. Collins's mention of Lady Catherine, which seemed to permeate every conversation. "Thank you, Mr. Collins. I look forward to meeting her." During her first few days at Hunsford, Elizabeth observed how Charlotte managed her new household. Mr. Collins was as pompous and obsequious as ever, constantly praising Lady Catherine and seeking her approval. Charlotte, however, seemed content. She had created a comfortable home and had found a way to coexist peacefully with her husband. One afternoon, Charlotte and Elizabeth decided to take a walk in the garden. The spring flowers were in full bloom, and the air was filled with the scent of blossoms. "How are you finding life at Hunsford, Charlotte?" Elizabeth asked, hoping for an honest answer. Charlotte smiled. "It is different from what I imagined, Lizzie, but I am content. Mr. Collins is a kind husband, and I have found satisfaction in managing our home. Lady Catherine is very particular, but I have learned to navigate her demands." Elizabeth admired Charlotte's practical approach. "I am glad to hear that, Charlotte. You have made a lovely home here." As they walked, Mr. Collins appeared, looking rather excited. "Mrs. Collins, Miss Elizabeth, Lady Catherine has invited us to dine at Rosings Park this evening. It will be a great honour for you to meet her, Miss Elizabeth." Elizabeth nodded politely. "I look forward to it, Mr. Collins." That evening, Elizabeth dressed carefully for the visit to Rosings Park. She was curious to meet the formidable Lady Catherine de Bourgh, whom Mr. Collins had praised so excessively. When they arrived, Elizabeth was struck by the grandeur of the estate. Rosings Park was imposing, with its large, stately manor and meticulously kept grounds. Lady Catherine received them in her drawing-room. She was a tall, large woman with an air of authority and an obvious sense of her own importance. "Ah, Miss Bennet," Lady Catherine said, looking Elizabeth up and down. "I hear you are one of the Bennets from Longbourn. How many sisters do you have?" Elizabeth replied calmly, "I have 4 sisters, Lady Catherine." "5 daughters," Lady Catherine exclaimed. "What a burden for your poor mother. Are any of your sisters out in society?" "Yes, all of them are out, except the youngest," Elizabeth answered. Lady Catherine raised her eyebrows. "All? The younger ones out before the elder are married? Your youngest sisters must be very young. Elizabeth smiled politely. The youngest is not yet 16, but in such cases we do not observe the strict rules of etiquette. Lady Catherine looked disapproving. That is very improper. I hope you are all well educated. What is your mother thinking? Elizabeth felt slightly uncomfortable, but maintained her composure. We have had a good education, Lady Catherine. Lady Catherine continued to ask questions about the Bennet family and their situation, offering her unsolicited advice on every topic. Elizabeth found her overbearing and condescending, but answered her questions politely. During dinner, Lady Catherine dominated the conversation, speaking about her estate, her plans, and her opinions on various subjects. Mr. Collins listened with rapt attention, nodding eagerly at every word. Elizabeth, meanwhile, observed Lady Catherine and the way she treated those around her. It was clear that she expected to be obeyed without question. After dinner, Lady Catherine invited Elizabeth to play the piano. Elizabeth obliged, playing a few pieces while Lady Catherine critiqued her technique and offered advice on how to improve. You play quite well, Miss Bennet, Lady Catherine said, but you could benefit from more practice and instruction. You should have learned the pianoforte much earlier. Elizabeth smiled and thanked her, though she felt that Lady Catherine's praise was more of a critique than a compliment. The evening at Rosings Park left Elizabeth with mixed feelings. She was glad to have met Lady Catherine, if only to see firsthand the person Mr. Collins idolized. She also felt a sense of relief that she had not married Mr. Collins, as living under Lady Catherine's constant scrutiny would have been intolerable. Back at Hunsford, Elizabeth shared her thoughts with Charlotte. Lady Catherine is quite impressive, she said diplomatically. Charlotte laughed softly. She is indeed. But she means well, and Mr. Collins is very eager to please her. It makes life here quite interesting. Elizabeth appreciated Charlotte's positive outlook. You have a wonderful way of finding the best in every situation, Charlotte. I admire you for that. As the days passed, Elizabeth settled into a comfortable routine at Hunsford. She and Charlotte spent many hours together, talking and enjoying each other's company. They visited the village, took walks in the countryside, and read books from Mr. Collins's extensive library. One day, while walking to the village, they encountered Mr. Darcy. He was visiting his aunt, Lady Catherine, and seemed surprised to see Elizabeth. Miss Bennet, Mr. Darcy greeted her with a slight bow. I did not expect to see you here. Mr. Darcy, Elizabeth replied, equally surprised. I am visiting my friend, Mrs. Collins. Mr. Darcy looked at Charlotte and nodded politely. Mrs. Collins, it is a pleasure to see you again. Charlotte smiled. Thank you, Mr. Darcy. It is nice to see you as well. Elizabeth noticed that Mr. Darcy seemed more reserved than usual, and she wondered if he was uncomfortable. Their conversation was brief, and Mr. Darcy soon excused himself and continued on his way. As they walked back to Hunsford, Charlotte said, Mr. Darcy is a very private man, isn't he? Elizabeth nodded. Yes, he is, but I must admit, I find him intriguing. Charlotte looked thoughtful. He has a strong sense of duty and responsibility. Lady Catherine often speaks of him with great pride. Elizabeth couldn't help but feel curious about Mr. Darcy. Despite her initial prejudice, she sensed that there was more to him than met the eye. She resolved to learn more about him during her stay in Kent. Elizabeth's visit to Hunsford proved to be a time of reflection and growth. She cherished the moments spent with Charlotte and gained a deeper understanding of her friend's choices. She also began to see Mr. Darcy in a new light, realizing that her first impressions might not have been entirely accurate. As her visit drew to a close, Elizabeth felt grateful for the time spent with Charlotte and the insights she had gained. She promised to visit again soon and bid her friend farewell with a sense of optimism for the future. Chapter 10. Meeting Lady Catherine. Elizabeth Bennet's visit to Hunsford had been pleasant so far, and she enjoyed spending time with her dear friend Charlotte. However, she could not help but feel curious and a bit apprehensive about meeting Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Mr. Collins had spoken so much about her that Elizabeth was eager to see for herself what this formidable woman was like. The opportunity came sooner than expected. One afternoon, Mr. Collins excitedly announced that Lady Catherine had invited them all to dine at Rosings Park. "It is a great honour, Miss Elizabeth," he said, beaming. "You will see for yourself the grace and grandeur of Lady Catherine." Elizabeth smiled politely. "I am looking forward to it, Mr. Collins." That evening, Elizabeth dressed carefully, knowing that first impressions were important. She wore a simple but elegant dress and arranged her hair neatly. Charlotte, as always, looked composed and serene. Mr. Collins was almost bursting with pride as he led them to Rosings Park. Rosings Park was a grand estate with a large, stately manor surrounded by beautiful gardens. Elizabeth admired the well-kept grounds and the imposing architecture as they approached the house. They were received by a servant and shown into an elegantly furnished drawing-room where Lady Catherine was waiting. Lady Catherine de Bourgh was a tall, imposing woman with an air of authority. She had a commanding presence, and her sharp eyes seemed to take in everything at once. She greeted them with a formal nod. "Mrs. Collins, Mr. Collins, welcome," Lady Catherine said in a strong, confident voice. "And this must be Miss Elizabeth Bennet. I have heard much about you." Elizabeth curtsied politely. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Lady Catherine." Lady Catherine looked her over, her gaze critical, but not unkind. "Yes, you are very like your mother. I understand you have many sisters." "Yes, Lady Catherine, I have 4 sisters," Elizabeth replied. Lady Catherine raised an eyebrow. "5 daughters? Your poor mother must be very busy. And are any of your sisters out in society?" "Yes, all of them are out, except the youngest," Elizabeth answered. "All!" Lady Catherine exclaimed. "The younger ones out before the elder are married? Your youngest sisters must be very young." Elizabeth smiled politely. "The youngest is not yet 16, but in such cases we do not observe the strict rules of etiquette." Lady Catherine looked disapproving. "That is very improper. I hope you are all well educated. What is your mother thinking?" Elizabeth felt slightly uncomfortable, but maintained her composure. "We have had a good education, Lady Catherine." Lady Catherine continued to ask questions about the Bennet family and their situation, offering her unsolicited advice on every topic. Elizabeth found her overbearing and condescending, but answered her questions politely. As they moved to the dining room, Elizabeth was struck by the grandeur of the house. The table was set with fine china and silver, and the meal was served by attentive servants. Lady Catherine sat at the head of the table, presiding over the meal with an air of superiority. During dinner, Lady Catherine dominated the conversation, speaking about her estate, her plans, and her opinions on various subjects. Mr. Collins listened with rapt attention, nodding eagerly at every word. Elizabeth, meanwhile, observed Lady Catherine and the way she treated those around her. It was clear that she expected to be obeyed without question. "Miss Bennet," Lady Catherine said, turning her attention to Elizabeth, "do you play the piano?" "Yes, I do," Elizabeth replied. "And do you sing?" Lady Catherine asked. "A little," Elizabeth answered. Lady Catherine nodded. "You should practice more. Music is a very important accomplishment. Do your sisters play as well?" "Yes, they do," Elizabeth said. Lady Catherine continued to give her opinions on various topics, from the importance of music and drawing to the best methods of managing a household. Elizabeth found her advice intrusive, but remained polite, knowing that Lady Catherine was used to being listened to without question. After dinner, Lady Catherine invited Elizabeth to play the piano. Elizabeth obliged, playing a few pieces while Lady Catherine critiqued her technique and offered advice on how to improve. "You play quite well, Miss Bennet," Lady Catherine said, "but you could benefit from more practice and instruction. You should have learned the pianoforte much earlier." Elizabeth smiled and thanked her, though she felt that Lady Catherine's praise was more of a critique than a compliment. She played a few more pieces before Lady Catherine allowed her to stop. As the evening continued, Elizabeth found herself conversing with Mr. Darcy, who had been quiet for most of the evening. He seemed more reserved than usual, but Elizabeth sensed that he was watching her closely. "Miss Bennet," Mr. Darcy said, "how do you find Rosings Park?" "It is very grand," Elizabeth replied. "Lady Catherine has a beautiful estate." Mr. Darcy nodded. "Yes, she takes great pride in it. She is very particular about everything." Elizabeth smiled. "I have noticed. She has a very strong presence." "Indeed," Mr. Darcy said, "she is used to being obeyed." Elizabeth glanced at Lady Catherine, who was now engaged in conversation with Mr. Collins. "It must be challenging to live up to her expectations." Mr. Darcy looked thoughtful. "It can be, but she means well. She cares deeply for those she considers her own." Elizabeth considered this. Despite her initial impression of Lady Catherine as overbearing and condescending, she could see that there was a genuine concern for those around her, even if it was expressed in a rather imperious manner. As the evening drew to a close, Lady Catherine addressed Elizabeth again. "Miss Bennet, I trust you have found your visit enlightening. It is important for young ladies to be well-rounded and knowledgeable." "Yes, Lady Catherine, I have learned a great deal," Elizabeth replied politely. Lady Catherine nodded approvingly. "Good. Remember, Miss Bennet, that a woman must always strive to improve herself and be an asset to her family." "Thank you, Lady Catherine. I will keep that in mind," Elizabeth said. When it was time to leave, Lady Catherine bade them farewell with her usual formality. "Mrs. Collins, Mr. Collins, Miss Bennet, I trust you will have a pleasant evening. We shall see you again soon." As they walked back to Hunsford, Elizabeth reflected on the evening. She had found Lady Catherine to be every bit as imposing as Mr. Collins had described, but she also saw a different side to her. Despite her arrogance and demanding nature, Lady Catherine had a genuine concern for those in her circle. "How did you find Lady Catherine?" Charlotte asked, as they reached the parsonage. "She is quite impressive," Elizabeth replied diplomatically. "I can see why Mr. Collins holds her in such high regard." Charlotte smiled. "She can be very demanding, but she is also generous in her own way. It is a balance I have learned to navigate." Elizabeth admired Charlotte's ability to handle such a strong personality. "You do it with grace, Charlotte. I'm glad to see you so content here." The visit to Rosings Park had given Elizabeth much to think about. She had seen the grandeur of Lady Catherine's world and the weight of expectations placed on those within it. She also realized that first impressions were not always accurate, and that there was often more to people than met the eye. As Elizabeth prepared for bed that night, she reflected on her interactions with Lady Catherine and Mr. Darcy. She felt that she had learned something valuable about human nature and the complexities of relationships. The visit had been enlightening, and she looked forward to her remaining time at Hunsford with a renewed sense of curiosity and understanding. Chapter 11. Darcy's First Proposal. Elizabeth Bennet's visit to Hunsford Parsonage had been eventful. She had enjoyed spending time with her friend Charlotte, and had learned a great deal about Lady Catherine de Bourgh. However, the most surprising and memorable event was yet to come. One afternoon, Elizabeth decided to take a walk in the gardens near Rosings Park. She needed some time alone to reflect on everything she had experienced. The weather was pleasant, and she enjoyed the fresh air and the beauty of the blooming flowers. As she walked, she was deep in thought and did not notice Mr. Darcy approaching until he was quite close. "Miss Bennet," Mr. Darcy said, startling her slightly. "Mr. Darcy," Elizabeth replied, regaining her composure, "I did not expect to see you here." "I hope you do not mind the interruption," he said, looking serious and somewhat uneasy. "I have something important to discuss with you." Elizabeth was curious, but also wary. "Of course, Mr. Darcy. What is it?" Mr. Darcy took a deep breath and began to speak. "Miss Bennet, you must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you." Elizabeth was taken aback. She had not expected this at all. Mr. Darcy continued, his expression earnest and intense. "Ever since I met you, I have been drawn to your wit, intelligence, and beauty. Despite my efforts to resist, I find myself deeply in love with you. I want to marry you, Miss Bennet." Elizabeth was shocked. She had never imagined that Mr. Darcy would propose to her. She was silent for a moment, trying to process what he had said. Then, gathering her thoughts, she replied, "Mr. Darcy, I appreciate your feelings, but I cannot accept your proposal." Mr. Darcy looked stunned. "You cannot accept? May I ask why?" Elizabeth felt a surge of anger as she thought of all the reasons why she could not marry him. "There are many reasons, Mr. Darcy. First, your actions have caused great pain to my sister Jane. You separated her from Mr. Bingley, who truly cared for her." Mr. Darcy's expression grew more serious. "I did what I thought was best for my friend. I believed Miss Bennet was indifferent to him." "You were wrong," Elizabeth said firmly. "Jane has been heartbroken since Mr. Bingley left. Your interference was both unwelcome and hurtful." Mr. Darcy seemed troubled by her words, but did not interrupt. "Second," Elizabeth continued, "I cannot forget your treatment of Mr. Wickham. He told me how you wronged him, denying him his rightful inheritance." Mr. Darcy's face darkened. "Mr. Wickham has misled you. There is more to that story than you know." Elizabeth shook her head. "Regardless, your actions have shown me that you are not the man I could respect or love." Mr. Darcy looked deeply pained. "I see that I have offended you greatly, but my feelings remain unchanged. I love you, Elizabeth, and I want to make you my wife." Elizabeth's anger flared. "How can you expect me to accept a proposal from a man who has caused my family so much pain? Your arrogance, your pride, your disdain for those you consider beneath you, it is all too much." Mr. Darcy's expression hardened. "I see. You have made your feelings quite clear. I am sorry to have disturbed you, Miss Bennet." He turned and walked away, leaving Elizabeth standing alone in the garden, her heart pounding. She felt a mix of emotions, anger, disbelief, and a strange sense of sadness. She had never imagined that Mr. Darcy would propose to her, and his words had stirred feelings she did not fully understand. As she walked back to the parsonage, Elizabeth replayed the conversation in her mind. She was still shocked by Mr. Darcy's declaration of love and his proposal. She had always seen him as proud and disdainful, yet his words had revealed a different side of him. Despite her anger, she could not deny that his proposal had been sincere. When she returned to the parsonage, Elizabeth went straight to her room. She needed time to think and to sort out her feelings. She was upset by the way Mr. Darcy had treated Jane and Mr. Wickham, but she also wondered if there was more to the story than she knew. The next day Mr. Darcy visited the parsonage. He asked to speak with Elizabeth privately, and she agreed, though she was still wary of him. They walked together in the garden, and Mr. Darcy handed her a letter. "Miss Bennet," he said, "I ask you to read this letter. It will explain my actions and perhaps give you a better understanding of my feelings." Elizabeth took the letter, curious but cautious. She read it later in her room, and as she did, her feelings began to change. In the letter, Mr. Darcy explained his reasons for separating Jane and Mr. Bingley. He believed that Jane did not truly care for Mr. Bingley, and that her family was not suitable for his friend. He admitted that he was wrong about Jane's feelings, but insisted that he had acted out of concern for Mr. Bingley. Regarding Mr. Wickham, Mr. Darcy revealed that Wickham had squandered the money left to him by Mr. Darcy's father, and had attempted to elope with Mr. Darcy's young sister, Georgiana, to gain her fortune. Mr. Darcy had intervened to protect his sister, and had refused to support Wickham any further. As Elizabeth read Mr. Darcy's words, she felt a growing sense of conflict. She realized that she had judged him harshly, and that there was more to his actions than she had understood. She felt a pang of regret for her earlier harsh words. The next day, Elizabeth saw Mr. Darcy again. She approached him, holding the letter in her hand. "Mr. Darcy," she said, "thank you for your letter. It has given me much to think about." Mr. Darcy looked at her with a mixture of hope and caution. "I am glad you read it. I hope it has helped you understand my actions better." Elizabeth nodded. "It has. I see now that I judged you too quickly. I still cannot agree with everything you did, but I understand your reasons better." Mr. Darcy's expression softened. "That is all I can ask for, Miss Bennet. I hope that in time you can think of me more kindly." Elizabeth smiled faintly. "I will try, Mr. Darcy." As they parted, Elizabeth felt a strange sense of hope. She did not know what the future held, but she was willing to give Mr. Darcy the benefit of the doubt and to see where their relationship might lead. Chapter 12. Darcy's Letter. After Mr. Darcy's unexpected proposal and Elizabeth's firm rejection, she was left feeling a mixture of emotions. The next morning, as she walked in the garden of Hunsford Parsonage, she saw Mr. Darcy approaching. He looked serious and determined. "Miss Bennet," he began, "I understand that my proposal has caused you distress. I ask you to read this letter. It will explain my actions and perhaps give you a better understanding of my feelings." Elizabeth took the letter, curious but cautious. She watched as Mr. Darcy turned and walked away, leaving her alone with her thoughts. She decided to return to her room to read the letter in private. As she opened the letter, Elizabeth felt a sense of anticipation. She began to read, her eyes moving quickly over Mr. Darcy's neat handwriting.